great pleasure to come down here to this wonderful event, straight from my constituency advice session in Leeds. I look forward to coming down next time, not on a privatised train, but on a train in public ownership under a Labour government. I wanted to start off really by picking up on something that Diane said. We all know, don't we, that the real division in society isn't between the so-called 48% who voted to remain and the so-called 52% who voted leave. As socialists, we know that the real divide in society is between the 99%, regardless how they voted in that referendum, regardless actually of how they even vote in a general election, and the super privileged 1% at the top. And on this question of Brexit, on this question of the European Union, I believe that the position that we have taken, the position democratically decided by the party, has been correct. I believe that we were correct not to precipitously call for a second referendum. I believe we were correct to try and negotiate even with Theresa May to see if a decent enough deal could be done. But of course it couldn't. Of course it couldn't. And if it couldn't be done with Theresa May, it's certainly not going to be able to be done with Boris Johnson. So in my view, our policy, arrived at by Labour Party Conference 2018, to support calling for a public vote in certain circumstances was and is the correct policy. And let me make it clear, I believe that those circumstances are now here. I believe it's right to call for a public vote. In the General Election Manifesto of 2017, we said rightly that we accept and respect the outcome of the referendum. In the General Election Manifesto of 2017, it also said, and we were correct, that we would reject and do whatever it takes to stop a disastrous no-deal Brexit. What we are facing now are the twin threats of Trumpism in the UK in the form of Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage, and the threat of no-deal Brexit. The threat of a no-deal Brexit that will be used as a stepping stone to Thatcherism 2.0. And in the area that I represent, right across the country, in fact, including here in London, people know what the free market fundamentalism of Thatcherism did in the 1980s. And there is no way that we can flinch from our moral duty to stand against Trumpism in the UK and stand against a no-deal Brexit and all the harm that that will do to the working class in all its diversity. Because these things are a clear and present threat to the working class. And it's true, isn't it, that Donald Trump's ambassador and then Donald Trump himself let the cat out of the bag when they talked about our National Health Service, the greatest example of socialist principles being put into practice in this country's history. They talked about our NHS being on the table for trade negotiations post-Brexit. We can't allow that to happen. We understand as socialists that people will use maybe actually what Naomi Klein called the theory of disaster capitalism. They used it after the flood in New Orleans to try and privatise the schools and fundamentally rebalance things in favour of corporations, in favour of the predatory private sector and against trade unions and working people. And the shores night follows day, a no-deal Brexit would be used in the same way to strike against the working class in all its diversity. But of course, comrades, calling for a public vote isn't enough. Calling for a public vote isn't a panacea to the problems faced by communities across this country, whether they voted Leave or voted Remain. We're not the Liberal Democrats. When we call, just to remind you, enablers of austerity, upholders of the current economic system that do so much damage to working class communities, when we call for a public vote to stop no deal Brexit or to stop a Boris Johnson Brexit. We've got to be more socialist, more radical, more transformative, because that's what we need to do to get behind us not only communities that voted Remain, but communities that voted Leave as well. So rest assured, we're going to be more insurgents, more radical, more transformative, more anti-austerity, because that's what we've got to be, because the times actually demand it. In short, we're going to be taking on the establishment. I myself, in my own way, took on the establishment relatively recently when I managed to beat, after 5.5 hours of being cross-examined in the High Court, I managed to beat the Sun newspaper defamatory things, and I was pleased that their attempt last week to reverse that decision in the Court of Appeal failed. And the money that has been awarded to me by the judge, don't worry, I'm not keeping it myself. I'm not going to use it to buy 10 years of Leeds United season tickets for myself and Richie. If he supports Leeds as well, we'll keep too quiet in Scotland. You're quite right to. I'm going to use it to fund a justice internship so that somebody from Leeds, from an unrepresented background, and first of all, work with a member of Labour's shadow cabinet, and then work for me when I'm a member of Jeremy Corbyn's cabinet after the next general election. But when I'm talking about taking on the establishment, when I'm talking about me being kicked around by the establishment, and then being lucky enough to take the establishment to court and win. That's just one small example, because the reality is that the working class, in all its diversity in this country, the 99%, has been kicked around by the establishment for too long. Kicked around by 0 hours contracts, kicked around by austerity, kicked around by debt, kicked around by the export of good manufacturing jobs and the import of bad, insecure employment practices, largely from the United States of America. So our political project and our socialist government is all about empowering the working class in all its diversity to fight back collectively and fight back together. But look at the position we're in now, and I will quote from the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights. Recently said, although the United Kingdom is the world's fifth largest economy, 1/5 of its population, 14 million people, live in poverty, and 1.5 million of them experienced destitution in 2017. Policies of austerity introduced in 2010 continue largely unabated despite the tragic social consequences. Close to 40% of children are predicted to be living in poverty by 2021. Food banks have proliferated. Homelessness and rough sleeping have increased greatly. Tens of thousands of poor families must live in accommodation far from their schools, jobs and community networks. Life expectancy is falling for certain groups, and the legal aid system has been decimated. That's the situation we're in now after 9 years of austerity. The situation we will be when Trumpism is in number 10 will be far, far worse. We must all brace ourselves for greater challenges, and the greater the challenges are, the greater the mobilisation of our movement and the 99% must be. Just consider the situation faced by survivors of Grenfell. That epitomises, doesn't it, so much that is wrong with the way our society is run. See how the issues of race and class fed in to that great and preventable tragedy. See how one of the most sophisticated states and the fifth richest economy in the world hasn't managed by even now to get everyone from that community somewhere permanent to call home. That's the reality in the fifth richest economy in the world. So I think we need to be, as a Labour government, as a socialist-led Labour government, in charge of the state in order to mobilise the power of the state in favour of humanity, in favour of decency, in favour of communities, diverse communities, the length and breadth of the country. So we're going to be taking on the establishment. They're certainly taking on us. So we have a choice. We either recognise what this is about and respond accordingly, or we go back, which no one in the Shadow Cabinet suggesting, or anywhere else, to a kind of business as usual politics, which will not suffice for this time. When we're talking about taking on the establishment, just think about what that means. Imagine later this year a general election. Imagine after that general election, the Prime Minister, Jeremy Corbyn, sat in the United Nations Security Council opposite Donald Trump, hopefully to be replaced by Bernie Sanders at some point. Opposite Donald Trump, speaking out and using our veto as a permanent member when it comes to Donald Trump's latest idea of bombing or invading or occupying Iran. That is what is at stake. That is what is at stake. And the establishment in the United States realise that. The establishment in the UK realise that. So never think that the struggle you're involved in is somehow a minor, trifling matter. It is of geopolitical significance. And I, for one, can't wait to have, as Prime Minister, the most anti-racist, the most internationalist, the most socialist Labour leader and Prime Minister this country has ever had. That will be a government with a Prime Minister who's speaking out against the idea of flogging weapons to the Saudi Arabian war machine, that's speaking up for the rights of the people of Palestine to their own state and to the treaty. Speaking up for peace and against war, and here domestically, with Diane Abbott as Home Secretary and John McDonnell as Chancellor, will be speaking up and delivering a fundamental and irreversible shift in wealth, power and control in favour of the working class in all its diversity. It will be an end to the scapegoating of migrants. It will be an end to the penalising of minorities. It will be an end to shifting the blame from those responsible for the banking crisis to everyone else. But the penultimate comment, really, that I want to make today is that the establishment realises what we're about. The politics is the 99%. But we need to be clear in our movement what the working class is. If we're not clear what the working class is, then we're certainly not going to be able to reach out to the working class or stand up for its interests. The working class isn't just people in my constituency in Leeds. The working class isn't 20% of the population. The working class isn't people just who work in heavy industry. The working class isn't just people who were born here. The working class certainly isn't just people who are white. The working class is not a minority in our society. The working class is a majority in our society. Workers by hand and by brain. All those who create the wealth in our society. All those who keep our public services running. And fundamentally, all those who go out to work or have to be supported by social security if they can't go to work. That really is why we're socialists, because we believe in the revolutionary potential of the vast majority in our society that keep our society running to fundamentally transform society in partnership, a partnership in power, if you will, with a Labour government committed to that fundamental and irreversible shift in wealth, power and control. I really just want to, thank you very much, I really just want to finish on this. Tony Benn really the ideological father of Corbynism.
Yeah.
Tony Benn, and the ideological father of the Arise Festival. And also Dan's ideological father, Laura's ideological father, John McDonnell's ideological father, our collective ideological father, said, we're not here just to manage capitalism, we're here to change society. We're here to change society. And you know what? With your help, we will. Thank you very much.